Hey guys, this is Mike Chang from Six Pack Shortcuts. Today I'm going to show you a new workout. It's not for newbies, it's for advanced bodybuilders like myself. So you might want to slow down a bit. But this new workout is called the mouse clicking workout. I use it when I cut weight for competitions and stuff. So what you do is you go on pokerstars.com and you click call, raise, or fold. And I'll just click around for you to see how fast I can click. You might want to slow down a bit. You work your way up to my level. But in all seriousness, we will be going over a sit and go against Yan Fei 1 from Singapore. Some concepts to go over. Bluff raising the flop, your optimal shoving range, etc. Let us begin. I'm on the right, if you have not noticed my hole cards, with 2 jack offsuit, high upping the nuts pre-flop, and let's begin this replay. It'll be folded around a bunch. Six four premium, all in. Yeah, not much action. Things tend to go slowly at the beginning while you're trying to adjust to each other's play style. Now here's an interesting move. Pause the video. 3-bet with Jack 5 suited since it's such a premium hand. But Yan Fei has been min raising a lot, which means that not all of his hands are premium hands. So once in a while you do want to make moves like a 3-bet with a less than premium hand. If you drive up your 3-bet percentage, they'll obviously call lighter in the future, and that way you can get paid off with your premium hands. But hands like Jack 5 that have very little post-flop value, you can actually 3-bet and bluff on an ace-high board, for example, or you can pair your 5 or your Jack and continue betting. But this is a move to show him that he can't always raise the 40 and not be punished for it. So he's probably going to fold, if I remember correctly. He does fold, and that'll probably slow him down a little bit. Let's see if he folds his next hand. No, he doesn't. So he hasn't learned. It takes him a while. He's from Singapore. Alright. Whoops. Starting to c-bet, take it down with ace high. Alright, here's a situation. Let me go back here. So I raised with less than premium hands, suited, it's 9-4, and I got called. Checks to me, and I c-bet with my flush draw, and he raises. He could raise with a variety of hands here, and you'll often find he raises the flop. He check raises the flop quite a bit, and you'll have to learn how to proceed. In this case, he hasn't raised too much. I put 80, he raised 200. I am still priced into draw here. He could have a variety of hands. He could have air, or he could have a strong, maybe 2 pair, maybe 5-6. It's unlikely that he'd raise Queen X, I feel. This board is rather wet. I mean, 7-8 can get there on the turn. Flush draw can get there on the turn. But as we will see, well, it really depends on his action on the turn, how much he bets, if he bets at all. If not, he probably has air. But as we will see, like, some boards are wetter than others. This is not a particularly wet board, even though there is a flush draw on a straight board. I'll show you another one in the future of how to proceed on a suspicious looking board like you wouldn't check raise on. This board you wouldn't check raise on. It's not particularly wet. It's not like a 9-10 jack kind of board where you're check raising your set of 10s, because you don't want any card to come up on the turn. Because I could have, you know, if it's 9-10 jack, I could have 9-10, queen 9, queen king, or top 2 or bottom 2, that if you have the strongest hand, you should really get the money in before you receive any cards and you have to shut down. But this is a standard call from with the flush draw. We call. The king comes on the turn and he checks. And this is very suspicious because it makes me think he has air. I mean, it's 1 overcard on the turn. If he has Queen X, he can't possibly be afraid of anything. I can't imagine like a set of 5s not betting the turn and try to play it tricky. Maybe induces a bet and you shoves over on top. Even so, I can still catch the river to complete my flush. But this makes me think he has air. He shouldn't be afraid of the king if he has Queen X or he has a particularly strong hand. Calling the flop makes it seem like I have a strong hand. So he has to take that into consideration. He checks. I think a wise play would be to bet the turn. We could take the free card and try to complete our flush and win it legitimately. But given how the actions turned out, it's unlikely as a queen, it's unlikely as a king, it's unlikely as anything. So we should bet and take the initiative. When we bet here, we make it big enough so that if we get called, we can shove the river as a bluff, or we can shove the river when we complete our flush. So we bet about 320 into 520, and that'll make it about 1100 or so, if my math is not terrible. And then we can shove our 800 into 1100, and that's a pretty decent all-in bet. You generally want, yeah, and we take it down on the turn because he has air, and you'll find he has air a lot. Again, 3-betting, and I 3-bet him right after a big hand. It's very noticeable. So he should take that into consideration. I doubt he did though. He's in. Alright. Not much action. Let's fold it around. Raise any folds. And I call out a position with 9-8 offsuit. It's a decent hand. I float the flop. King 6-4 rainbow. It's really broken. If he doesn't have the king, which he oftentimes he does not, we can and if he checks the turn behind, we can safely bluff the river because there's no way he's checking a king behind. I mean, like, this looks like a pretty dangerous board, the 6-4-5. But what could I possibly call the flop with? I could call a flop with 5-7 and I pair my 5s, for example. I have an open-ended pair my 5s on the turn. The king is still ahead and he should bet, right? It's unlikely I would call a flop bet with a gut shot, 7-8 for example. It's possible. I'm floating. I could be floating with a variety of hands. I could be floating with a 10 queen if I think it's the best hand. So we'll continue. He checks behind, makes me think he's super weak. Now, here's a huge bet size for me. We have the absolute nuts. The 7 came on the river. We have 8-9 for the absolute highest straight. And we bet. This is a very polarized board. And on polarized boards, you generally want to make a big bet. If he has a king, it seems like a very bluffy thing to do. Either you have it or you have air. I mean, you wouldn't be betting a king, for example, on a 4, 5, 6, 7 board. So you really want to polarize your range. One way to do it is to bet almost full pot or full pot. But as it turns out, he has air. I would wonder what happens if I check to him, and he would probably bluff at it when we can shovel the top. That is up for consideration. I'm not sure if he would check it down or he would try to bluff at it. But he has checked down a few flops, I guess, in the past. So it makes me think that I wouldn't be getting value from anything else, and he could possibly hero call. I call from king 6, our position, standard C bet. I have an overcard, an open-ended, I call. He makes a big bet on the turn and I fold. Not much I can do there. I can't. He doesn't have the stack behind him to make a move, and I don't want to get shoved over top with just an overpair and an open-ended draw. I bet my mid pair, take it down. Call king X. Now here's an interesting board. 8-8-8. Check check. I check again, and he bets on the 7. I think he has air at this point, so I call. If he's gonna bluff the turn, he has to bluff the river 100%, and I'd be prepared to call a river bet. There's no way he's betting an ace high here for value. So king high is probably ahead, and pair of 3s, for example, would bet the flop because there are a lot of turns and river cards that could hit my range. Like I could hit the 7, and I'll make a better full house than him. I think he's there at this point. 5, I check. He bets. That's a decent amount. It's bluff catcher amount. It says here 2.61. No, 2.6 to 1 to call. It's decent pot odds for the kind of hands that I have. Like, what could he be betting with? He has nothing on this board. Like 6-4 would bet here, 6-9. No straight would bet here. That's crazy. So we call. And he has air. He has queen jack, and realistically, there's no reason to bluff queen jack at this point. I think that was a weakness in his part. Queen high can take down a lot of these pots, and it was a pretty small pot to begin with. There's no reason to bloat up the pots that you bluff with. You could check behind, check, and just minimize your losses. You have excellent showdown value with the queen high, and you can definitely pair your jack or your queen on the turn river to win it legitimately. If you're bluffing the turn, you're bluffing the river for sure, unless you actually hit the river. But otherwise, again, no reason to bluff on this board. You just lose your 3x. You shouldn't just make plays on random strangers. Call with ace queen. Alright, flop comes with the ace high flush draw. C bet he calls. I check behind when I hit my flush like a boss, and he bets out. Now the 7's paired. You're only afraid of like a set that on the flop turned into a full house on the river. A set would definitely raise on the flop or the turn. No, definitely the flop. It's crazy. It's crazy talk by me. Again, he has air, and this play, really ruined his image for me. If he's gonna bluff a board like this, like, what's he betting for value? He could bet a jack here for value. There's no he's betting like a 9 of diamonds or like a 6 of diamonds. Any bluff, like low diamond, would be a bluff catcher at this point. So he can check call, for example, and if I'm bluffing, he can call with his 9 or 10 of diamonds, and he'd take it down. But to bet out of position like this is really ruin my image for him, and subsequently when we see more plays from him, that we will take this into consideration. So I raise. I don't raise much because I think he has air, and he folds. Queen jack out of position. I hit open-ended, paired flop, and I bet on the turn. I take it down. Queen jack, raise it to fold. I get a call from ace 9. See that flop. Now, okay, let's pause the video for a second. Alright, I c-bet the flop, I paired my aces, and he raises. Now what's wrong with this picture? Again, ace jack deuce, not particularly wet. I could have queen king for a gut shot, but there aren't many variety of straight hands, unlike a 10 jack queen board, for example. there's a diamond draw, but his stacks are so low that it really doesn't matter. To bluff to 180 and have 338 behind is not a legitimate move at all. I mean, I'm not folding any ace here. And the fact that he raised so little, I mean, he should be shoving if he has any ace, because he basically has to shove the turn if I call, which makes me think he has air. Generally, if you commit more than 25% of your stack, you should go all in. He doesn't go all in, and we'll see some very weak plays from him when he's short stack. So I jam it with top pair. It's a tournament. He folds, so he has air again. That's ruined my image for him. He does it a lot. I raise, calls. I see I have a flush draw. I have a chance to eliminate him. A backdoor straight. So I go all in. He has 300 in the 160. He's calling with any pair here. And he calls. He's mid pair, and he takes it down. It's okay. We have a 35% chance of eliminating him. It's pretty decent. But he doubles up. Not the worst thing in the world, because he's still pretty down. Tight fold on my part. Ace 9 suited. I raise. Now that right there was a mistake by me, I feel. Raising to 240 when he 3-betting to 240 when he raised 80. Why? Because if he calls, we take a look at the flop, and if I don't hit my ace or a 7 and I c-bet, he's calling with any pair. What I should have done was go all in, because playing ace X, like ace jack out of position, is not fantastic, especially when the blinds are high, because you can't really c-bet without him shoving over. Then you have to call for the pot odds, and you'll be drawing behind. What I should have done was to shove him over top. I mean, he has 80, he's 800 behind. It's definitely 10x, 10 times his blind. His raise can make him fold. Or what I should have said is generally 10x, 10 big blinds is enough to shove, because you can't play post flop with 10 big blinds or less. We proceed, we make it fold king 7 when he shoves over. Raise and a call. Now 8-6 suited out of position. It looks like a pretty hand, but it really isn't. I mean, those are rather low cards, and you would rather be playing high cards. There is a gap in between. 8-6 is substantially weaker than 8-7, for example. It really limits the amount of straight potential that you have. We're looking to make a move with 8-6, for a bluff raising board here, or something like that. So I check on the ace high board. He bets, and I check raise. I give him a little taste of his own medicine, but this is not exactly the board to check raise on, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, there's absolutely no draw here. There is a flush draw, but that's about it. And heads up, how many times could they have 2 diamonds in their hand? I'm really trying to represent the ace here, otherwise there's no way I can proceed. But he doesn't know that, right? If he has anything else but air, he should probably jam, just because I wouldn't be check raising an ace here very often. I would be check calling an ace, and a set of 4s wouldn't play like that, because like a set of 4s wouldn't have anything to worry about. So this is not the perfect position to check raise bluff, but it works out in the end. I don't think we ever had a good position to check raise bluff. Oh, queen 5. I see bet and he raises. I have air at this point. It doesn't matter if he has air. We'll give that pot to him. There's another check raise on the flop. He does it very often. I raise with the kings and I flat his 3-bet. Hoping to raise him on the flop perhaps. He bets out and I min raise him. Now I'm trying to make it look bluffy here with the min raise, like you're kind of afraid to commit chips or something. If he has anything, he'll jam. You can make arguments for min raising or calling. If you flat the flop, he will most likely shove the turn, or he can give up, because you know he had 300 chips before and he gave up, so I don't see why not. What I did this was, well, obviously you don't really need to protect your hand. If he has 3-betting with ace 4 for example and you catch your ace, you know, it's not the end of the world. You're not really protecting your hand by a min raise. It's more like trying to induce a shove over if he has like 8-9 on this board or something. So he does shove a snap call, and he has king 10, so he has top pair. I have his king outs, so he really is drawing the 2 outs. Unfortunately, he did catch the 10 on the turn, making a full house, which is a little 2-outer. That's unfortunate, but we'll move on. King 5, I call. What the hell is this? C bets and I call. Check. I check. When I check the turn and he checks behind, it makes me think I have air. I'm prepared to bluff any, well, not any river card, but most river cards. But when the ace high came, I actually have excellent showdown values, because you know I can take the board down with 6-6 ace king as my kicker. Unfortunately, he shows the 3s, which means he has me beat, but majority of the time I think check calling would be profitable here. You're only afraid of the ace. 10 would definitely bet again. 4 might bet again on the turn. On the turn he has air most of the time, and on the river it really solidified our hand as being the best hand most of the time, and that's an argument for check calling right there and checking it down, keeping the pot small where you don't have a very strong hand. Raise 5 jack, premium, pair my jack, should take this down. Yes I do. 10-9 is a pretty hand to play out of position. Call mid pair, C bet, and I donk it. I donk the turn, and this is a pretty unorthodox play, but I'll walk you through my reasoning. It makes it seem like I'm trying to represent the king jack for the absolute nuts here, but you know, why would king jack bet out of position, right? So it makes it seem like I'm trying to represent that hand. Maybe I have a much weaker hand, for example. So if he has queen x, if he has queen 7, he might actually jam, because the board is starting to get wet, right, with a 9-10 queen, with a, you know, a backdoor heart draw. I'm trying to make him jam with his better hands, like an ace, like his worst hands, for example. Like he's trying to jam my bluff. If I'm bluffing on the turn, he can jam with ace 10, queen 7, a lot of those hands. So that was my rationale. If he had anything, if not, it's unlikely that he would barrel the turn, because it completed so many draws. Like king jack got there, you know, new draws have opened up. Many pairs have got there already, if not on the turn. So that was my rationale for donking. I was really hoping he would shove on top, thinking that I was trying to bluff the turn, but fortunately he folds. A little bit of leveling there. I jam with ace jack. I realized my mistake before with the ace S7 or something, raising out of position, because you really don't want to play ace x out of position and lead into a flop that's like 8 high, for example, and then have it shoved in your face. So it would be much better to jam it. you're more than 10 big blinds ahead, obviously. But it's just generally hard to play out of position. Unlike Ace X in position, where you can always take a free card. 7 deuce. I'm surprised I didn't raise there. Next time. Alright, I raised to 6. This is an important hand, guys. Flop comes. I c-bet and he raises. Now let's analyze this board. He's been check raising a lot of these flops. Now, again, not the wettest board in the world. The king high is sticking out like a sore thumb. He's trying to represent this king, for example. Or maybe he has a flush draw or a straight draw. Unlikely, because I have the 2 blockers of the straight draw. But if you look at his bet sizing, it's not a huge raise. It's like a, well, in tournaments the raises aren't huge anyway, but this kind of bet doesn't really discourage any kind of draw. There aren't that many draws available. I mean, there are only so many combinations of 5-6 in my hand. If the board was 4-5-6, I could have many combinations of hands. Like 4-5-6, I could have 3-4, you know, 6-7, 5-7, any kind of straight draw. Like there's many permutations of hands, but there are only so many permutations of 5-6 on a straight draw, right? He could be potentially betting check raising on a straight draw and then leading the turn if he hits, or taking, you know, just taking initiative and then betting the turn again to make me fold. We're trying to make sure I really have the king here. Unlikely he would check raise the king on this board. He would be check calling. Same goes for Ace X. There just isn't anything he could represent. I mean, people with King X don't play this way. They would be check calling. So that's my rationale. Like, if he really has a king, and people with A7 wouldn't play this way either. If he really has a king, I'm really drawing to 2 outs here, or some backdoor straight draw. But I call, and he checks the turn, which is a 7. Now that is really suspicious. He really has air at this point, I feel, because if he check raised the 7, unlikely, he could keep barreling. King would keep barreling. Any other card would keep barreling. I mean, like pocket queens wouldn't even check raise the flop. That'd be crazy. And you bet 3-bet pre-flop. Arguments for checking behind or betting here. I bet here last time on the flush draw. That's because I didn't really want to see it go to showdown. But I'm actually pretty comfortable with my 6s at this spot. I could take a showdown. I could risk a free card if he's bluffing with Ace X. I could risk that ace. I mean, it's only 1 card left. He might bluff on this card. You never know. But I'm very comfortable. There are arguments for betting or checking behind. One thing about betting is, well, he's from Singapore, not from Norway, so he's not completely insane. He's not gonna, you know, check raise the flop and then check raise the turn or some crazy shit that you expect Norwegian players to do. But we check behind because it feels like the safer route. And the jack comes and he bets out. Tiny. 200 and 700 is like screaming for value here. It's killing me. Either he has air or he has, you know, he's trying to squeeze value out of the jack. That really feels like it, because if I check behind, it doesn't seem like I have the king too often. And I wouldn't check behind 7s. So I have a bluff catcher type of hand. I mean, I'm not beating anything on the board except for the 4. I don't think you'd be betting out a 4 on this board either with the, you know, the 2 overcards. I make the call. He has absolute air again, and we take this down. So a few things to learn from that hand. Up for review. Standard c-bet, and I raise. Again, hello.
Hi.
Yes, I'm recording a poker video right now.
Okay, so
yes.
talking to you.
I'm just talking to myself.
I thought maybe you were Skyping or something.
No, I'm not Skyping. This is to be uploaded onto the poker forum. Right now I'm just going through a few hands, discussing them. Yeah, we are recording, so don't say anything insane, like you're gonna bomb a building or something. Yes. Yeah, Mike is right here. That's not distracting at all, Mike. Alright. I check raise the flop. This is this is a good time to check raise. I mean, I have 2 overcards plus straight outs, 4 jacks to make my straight out. I'm not really afraid of him shoving over with ace-9. If so, I have 10 outs. 3 for the queen, 3 for the 10, 4 for the jack. Even worst case scenario is 40%. And if I bluff raise the flop here, I can comfortably lead with any sort of card. Like S7 could come and it would scare the living daylights out of him, or I could shove the turn with possible redraws if that's a blank, which will really put pressure on him. It also really allows me to define his range. If he has any sort of pair, well, he might actually shove ace-9 here, but it really polarizes his range. If he has Aries folding, if he has something, he might call, he might go all in. As it turns out, he has air, so we take this one down on the flop. Queen 8, and another terrible hand to play out of position. We're trying to make a move with this hand probably. I've just got tired of folding out of position because I do it too often. We'll see how it turns out. Mid pair. Board pairs on the turn. I'm not afraid of anything. And he should probably shut down at this point. Generally if the board pairs, anyone's calling, a 6 is calling again, an 8 is calling again. So I'm calling any kind of bet here. But he gives up. The river's blank. He should probably shut down here. I mean, like, he pairs his 3, he has showdown value. Whatever good that will do. But other than that, I'm not folding to anything.
Why didn't you bet the river?
Why didn't I bet the river? Yeah, well, it allows him. That's a good question. It allows him to bluff the board, I guess. That's also something worth mentioning. But he doesn't fall for it this time. Yeah, generally, out of position is really hard to get paid, especially on the river. Thanks for that, Mike. So you gotta allow him to bluff. He's capable of bluffing. He's check raise bluffed a lot of the flops. He's tried to bluff on that 4-card flush board. There's no reason to think he shouldn't be bluffing here, but unfortunately, he caught on. He's from Singapore and not from Norway. Anyway, a jam, he folds. That's actually well, we'll see. I'll say something else later. Now he goes all in. Now here's something to mention about shoving ranges. 8-9 is a really pretty hand, and you'd love to take this hand to post flop, but unfortunately the stack sizes don't allow for that. When you are shoving, when you're going all in, most important thing is high cards as opposed to any kind of straight potential or suited potential. For example, like if I have Jack 10, what is that? Crazy people. It's been dying a lot. The fuck? Oh, okay, I'm back. If I have Jack 10 suited, it's really pretty. I'm actually losing to Queen Deuce, believe it or not. It's crazy because the Queen High, if you're not playing post flop, Queen High generally takes it because both of you are unlikely to pair anything on the board. High card is what counts, and that'll define our shoving range many times. So even though 8-9 is a really pretty hand, it's not a great hand to call with. And that's something to note about optimal shoving ranges. King X, trying to level him, shove him. Maybe I'm shoving with like a bad hand or something because I'm steaming from the other shove, I don't know. He raises and I shove, and this is and he ends up folding this, I think. This is pretty bad because he committed a good quarter of his stack. I mean, if he has any rags, he should be calling here like 5 jack, and he'd be like what, 45% ish, 40%. His job as a short stack is to make big pots, and don't let the big stack grind you down in blinds. You really want to double up, make big pots, put pressure on the big stack, because the guy wants to maintain his lead, but he ends up folding, which is a weak play on his part, because what could he possibly be raising with, like deuce 7? Even then, those are at least live cards to my 10 queen. We'll turn around. Again, these are low cards. I cannot proceed. He should be going all in as opposed to raising 120. That's a very weak play. Because it allows me to get away cleanly. I mean, he has a little bit more fold equity if he just goes all in. Well, he doesn't have any at this point because he's so low stacked. But generally, you don't want to be raising half your stack in and then like folding, for example, or like having the big blind call and just trying to see a flop that he likes, and then he can donk shove into you, or you just fold the flop. Go all in as opposed to betting half your stack. So that's a weak play from him. King deuce, I raise, and I'm gonna get a call here. Again, high card usually takes it. You don't need both cards to be high. King high usually takes it unless you're not dominated. Unfortunately, it's king 9. I actually pair my deuce here, so he's in pretty bad shape, but unfortunately we both pair our kings, which is very unlikely because we both have a king in our hand. That makes us both have kings and 10s with his 9 kicker, so he actually takes this one down. Not a cooler, but it was a cooler on the flop, I guess. Oh well, he's back in good shape. And he has enough to play again. Which, he folds. My ace rag is pretty hard to call a shove. Like, I'm leading, before that I'm leading against king queen, but you're also losing to many other aces, like ace 7, ace 8, ace 10. It's generally like a card, ace X before, you have a lot of fold equity if you're the first to shove, but when you get shoved on with ace 6, for example, you're not in the greatest shape. You're kind of scared because you never know what the other guy, if your ace is dominated or not, and you're flipping with like low pocket pairs. You're slightly behind actually, because you don't even have straight outs. You're slightly behind even if you do have straight outs. But with ace X, you're only beating like king, queen, king, jack, those types of hands, and even then, those cards are still very live as opposed to yours, which are also live, obviously. All right, I raised with deuce jack because I got tired of folding. There's one high card here. Generally, if it's a cash game, you should probably fold this hand. But fortunately, I paired my jack on this board, so I bet it out. And he raises. Now this is like what, like the 5th check raise on the flop. This board again, not a heavy draw-y kind of board. Not a like there's a flush draw, but I can't always have a flush draw. What could he possibly be representing here? The argument for him check raising, for example, pair of 7s, is that he doesn't want to make, he really wants to define a range. He doesn't want me catching on the turn and river. It's also very hard to play like 7s if I barrel turn and river, and those happen to be high cards, right? If you're check calling 7s all the way down, and your stack's not exceptionally high. At the same time, if I do have something, I'm jamming here, and he has a very hard time calling with a pair of 7s, which he ends up having, by the way. Not a lot. Like what could he like bluff raising with? Not much. 8-9 with a gut shot, 4-5 with gut shot, nothing. Other than that, he's slow playing some big hand. But we play this now. We have the worst jack here. Any other jack beats us. But we play this like an ace deuce, and it comes ace 3-7. We're not folding any ace at this spot, especially if we see bet into it. It's a big pot. Yes, Mike, you may close the door. So we're gonna jam it, and he actually calls. A weak call from him actually, because well, we're doing this kind of leveling thing where you bluff raise. Maybe I'm raising over with some kind, like if I shove at this point, what am I shoving with ace 10 or something if I really didn't believe him? If I just called, like what he'd probably shove the turn or something. I actually like the turn because it gives me a flush redraw. But jamming ace deuce here is, I think, would be pretty standard. Like we treat this as ace deuce, even though it's jack deuce, because it's so ugly, this hand. But treat top pair as if it was premium, especially when the blinds are this deep, the pot's like this big. You cannot fold like jack 4 here to a check raise. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, even though there aren't many things he could represent on this board, and that's one of the things I factored in. You aren't representing shit on this board. Top pair is most likely the best hand. Like what could he have? 3-7, jack 7. None of these options. Jack 3. He has air. I think he has ace high or something. He turns out to have a 7. He actually calls, and he's behind. Unfortunately, he catches his 9 on the river. It's a pretty big cooler. It's been like that for a number of these pots now. But the important thing is to be positive EV when you're going in. The result doesn't really matter. King jack, shove. Yeah, the blind's getting deep, so you really have to shove your stack in. And we're very low stacked. Ace 3 is standard shove. It's being a lot of hands with ace 3. Again, ace 3, perfect to shove with, not perfect to call with. Deuces, shove. So we play even like 4s would be heavy pressure. Oh, it's gonna shove this. I fold 1s to get some legitimacy. 6s definite shove. 6s and above you can shove profitably. Any lower than that, and you tend to get dominated by higher pairs. Oh, I call, and let's go back. Well, I'm not folding any ace when the blinds are this high. He actually has a premium when the blinds are this high. Ace 10. There are very few hands. It's not like we have ace deuce, ace 3, where the majority of the time we're going to chop. Ace 10 is actually a very premium hand, because even if you pair your ace, like you still have the best kicker, barring a straight like king jack queen, in which case you still have the best hand. But like king jack 3, and then your 10 is the best kicker. Ace 10, for that reason, is a lot better than any other ace rag. That turns into a premium, and unfortunately we're behind here. We're like 25%, and he catches the turn, which means we're drawing dead on the river, and that is actually the end of the game. But a few concepts to learn would be, bluff raising the flop. He doesn't have it every time. What kind of board texture are you bluff raising with, or check raising with on the flop? And if it doesn't make sense, you can proceed with your pretty weak hands, especially if it's heads up. Other than that, some shoving ranges. We learn not to call a raise with call an all-in with 8-9 suited, even though it's really pretty, or ace X is really hard to call a shove, even though it's fantastic to shove in because you get a lot of fold equity. Unfortunately, that's that. A little bit of a cooler here and there, but again, it's not about whether you win or lose. It's about getting the positive EV once you get your chips in. So I guess that's that. I hope you enjoy your workout. Yes, I did end up losing this after like 3 coolers. Maybe if you watch the video afterwards, you will see a few hands. Other than that, thanks for watching. Again, this is Mike Cheng from 6-Pack Shortcuts. Have lots of protein. You've earned it. And that is that. Thank you for watching.